All right, so a lot has happened since my last video about programming. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it while I play through Yeet Fighter a little bit. Okay, hopefully you can hear me all right. So, the game was made, of course, as you saw if you watched my videos. It was put up for sale. Okay, so in communication, Hoser Games said, okay, we've got this many cartridges, it was something like 40, or chips, I mean. So I thought, okay, and he said I can put them up on eBay, and I'll go ahead and then you can watch the sales. You'll know what your royalties are. It's supposed to be $5 a game royalties for me, and I was very excited about it because I know eBay, a lot of people look for homebrew games on eBay, and he was going to be offering at a really good price, so I thought this is going to get me a lot of attention. Okay. So what ended up happening is, after he told me that, about a month went by. He sent me an email saying, where do I send the money? And I'm thinking, oh goodness, what do you mean, where are you sending? Because I didn't know he'd even produced the games yet. I thought he's still producing the games, and when the games are done being produced, then I'll get a link to eBay, stuff like that. And I said, okay, well, I can give you, my PayPal account, so you can send the money to my PayPal account. That's fine. Right, and I said I was under the impression that the game was going to be put on eBay, and it wasn't finished being produced yet. And so he said, no, I don't have enough chips, so I just sold it to people that I know. And then he gave me $25. So that means that he sold 5 games and didn't put it on eBay. Okay, so that's how that played out. Now, I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. How would you feel if you programmed a video game, this game you're seeing right here, only the okay, I think the score is different on the final game. I made the score like different. You made this awesome game here, okay? Someone said, okay, let's produce this game. And they said, okay, I've got the chips, I can produce 40 of them. I'll put it on eBay. He made a little insert sheet. He made the cartridge, put the label on it, and said, okay, we're going to put this up there, and then you can watch the sales on eBay so you'll know how many of them sold. And that's my assurance and my insurance that my game's being sold, and proof of how much I'm owed for the game. So that's great. That's no big deal. $5 a game, $40. It's a couple $100 maybe. No big deal. And then that person tells you, oh, I don't have enough chips. Suddenly I don't have enough chips, and so I just sold it to people that I know. And that's the deal. So we had a deal in writing. And it's just it's commonplace. It is. It's commonplace in my life for people to break their word to me. Whoa. And not follow through. It's just, I mean, it goes on all the time. So I offered the game online on YouTube. I said, okay, if you want this game, then I'll sell it to you. I'll sell you the ROM, is what I said. And I said that, maybe there's more of these left to buy, okay? And I got a couple of people who said they would be interested. At first it was none. I had a couple hundred views and then, basically nothing. But I had a couple of people say they were interested, and so I gave them my email and said, okay, if you want, I can give you the PayPal address to pay. I can send you a bin file, and you'll have your game. Okay, and I'm waiting for a response from them. While all this is happening, I befriend somebody on Facebook. I go to Facebook Marketplace. I don't really go on Facebook for Facebook. I go on there to, look for things to buy, for good deals on things if I can find them. So I went to Facebook, and I actually had a message from a person who publishes games for the Atari VCS, the new VCS, the one that's like internet capable and has, like modern PC graphic games. And he said, well, we actually have a 7800 and a 2600 emulator on the VCS. He said the 2600 emulator is like Stella. And I said, okay, well then with the right settings it should work well and look okay. And so we chatted a little bit, and he said, hey, I'll go ahead and send this to my people and we'll see if we can't get it published there as a download. So, even though there was that bump in the road, it could be that Yeet Fighter ends up being available for people to purchase as a download on the Atari VCS, the modern system. And I think that'd be really great. I think it would be, well, it would be a lot better than the success I've had so far. Now, in between him somewhat, deceiving me, and then the guy speaking to me on Facebook, I actually reached out and got in touch with two other publishers. And the main problem with both of the publishers, and apparently the problem with Hoser, was that they didn't have enough super chips. Now, super chips today are harvested off of certain games. Like Junior Pac-Man is one of them. I think Desert, Desert Eagle? Desert Falcon, something like that. That's one of them. I think Dig Dug might be one of them. There are a few games. I think it's like 15 or 16 titles that use the super chip, which is 128 bytes of RAM that's treated a certain way. Note I said 128 bytes, not 128 kilobytes. 128 kilobytes would be like twice the amount of RAM on a Commodore 64 or a Commodore Plus 4 being introduced to the Atari 2600, which was, from 1977. It was probably developed, 75, 76, released in 77, ran till 1992. Even though it's a similar processor, it's actually kind of a transistor hobbled version of that processor that was later used for the C64, and also even for the Commodore 64 disk drives. Those even have the CPU, the 6502. I think it's 6507 that we're talking about with the Atari. Now, the Atari originally was called the Atari VCS, but then, within the past few years, they came out with the Atari VCS modern version, which is like HDMI. It uses a joystick that's a lot like a, kind of like an Xbox joystick, but it can also use a vintage style joystick, and, just all around nice system. It has lots of games, like a lot of them are modern graphics, modern looking games. So, that's how things went. That's how things went with Yeet Fighter. So it is still out there online through me, if you want to purchase the bin file, which would be the ROM, to play using an Uno cart or a Harmony cart, or using your computer with Stella or whatever, RetroArch, whatever your 2600 emulator happens to be. MAME, I guess, does that. MES does it. Or a 2600 VCS may have it as a purchasable option amongst their homebrew or new 2600 emulated titles. So that would be very helpful for me. And the last thing he said to me was, "I got you, bro." Okay, so that was where we left off. That was a few days ago, and it was after we talked, and I sent him videos about it, and I sent him the written manual that Hoser had produced, I guess. So the first I guess I kind of struck out on the first one, and I don't what was done there. I think was a little underhanded, but at the same time, maybe he really didn't have the capability of making those cartridges, and so he just made a mistake in making that deal with me. So, and if you have 40 super chip chips, and then you make a deal with someone, and then you're looking at it and thinking, okay, well, I'll be using most or all of these chips for this one game that I'm going to turn around and sell. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe he changed his mind and didn't want to, but we did make a deal. It is in writing, in email. I saved all the emails because I suspected, because my life is like this, that something like this might happen. And and by that rationale, this guy who said, "Hey, I got you, bro," after we emailed back and forth and chatted in a messenger window and Facebook and all that stuff, may ghost me completely and never talk to me again and not do this. But if things go in a not common fashion for me, i.e., better luck, more fortunate, more positive outcome, then it could be that my game will be available as a purchasable download for the 2600 emulator on the modern Atari VCS system. And I would love that. I think it would be really great. It would be much better outcome than with Hoser Games. And now Hoser Games, when we talked, he said he was thinking of making an ARM board. And that would be using a modern chip on a PCB that could then emulate any of the classical chips and the modern chips that use the DPC Plus. So it could do DPC Plus, old DPC, or old Super Chip, old StarPath Supercharger, or any of those other ones that might use varying sizes of ROM. And it probably could also support larger ROMs like 64K or even maybe 128K, which gets well beyond what any Atari game could ever even got near. Like, I think they had 2 32K bank switching games, in the life of the system. I think one was Space Quest. I don't remember what the other one was. And most of the games, like I've said before, 2K, 4K, some 8K, a couple of 16K. But not many of those either. So most of them were 4K or 8K, and 8K would have been large. 4K would have been better than most of the other games, and then the 2K would have been your entry-level, run-of-the-mill, standard 2600 games. So how I feel about this? Well, of course, at first I felt, why did this happen? Why did someone tell me they were going to do something for me and then just kind of change midstream, like, well, I'm not going to do that? And I get that a lot. Like, I get it. That is my primary interaction with people. They say they'll do something for me, and then they don't. And it's just how it is. Like, I've got a target on me. I got a dark cloud following me around. No matter what I do, no matter how much work I put into it, no matter what people say to me, no matter what they promise, swear, vow, give me their word, friends, wives, relatives, mother, father, anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, associates, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. Everyone just breaks their word and lies to me no matter what happens in the world, and nothing ever gets done. And I'm not exaggerating. When somebody tells me they'll do something for me and then they actually do it, I'll tell you. I'll make sure to make a video about it. It might be a sign of the apocalypse, for real, because I don't think it is actually possible for someone to tell me they're going to do something for me or with me and actually keep their word to me. I'm just like, everyone else has a system, and they interact with each other, and they rely on each other's words and agreements and promises and vows and everything, contracts, whatever. And if I do that, then they don't have to honor that no matter what. So you don't have to honor your marriage vows to me. You don't have to honor your friendships with me. Anytime you said you love me, that didn't matter. If you never leave me, that didn't matter. If you said we'd be best friends forever, that didn't matter. You said, I will do this for you. It doesn't matter who it was, my own mom, my father, my whoever, all friends, it doesn't even matter. So if this guy actually does put my game up on for sale on the Atari VCS so people can download it, it will be uncharacteristic for my pattern of my life and how things go for me. And I don't know, maybe that is how it is for you, maybe not. But my game was available, but apparently only 5 people have the game. Only 5 people purchased it. This guy did say that he knows of a producer named Gemintronics who's about to start making cartridges, and that it might be possible that it's made through them. And I think that in the future, cheap ARM processor-based PCBs are going to be the only way to go with Superchip, because eventually either people will be keeping their copies of Superchip games that they own, or all of the ones that are seen to be worth harvesting chips from will be used up. So I wondered if there was maybe a replacement 128 byte chip that could be used in place of it, possibly with a bodged or reworked PCB for that, but I don't know. We're in the world of custom Atari memory chips from 40 years ago or 35 years ago, and who knows how many of those things are left, or who can get attached to them in a bulk enough way to actually produce. So when I first made a Superchip game, I thought, well, I don't want to go the really expensive route of the DPC Plus or DPC or whatever, the ARM-based chip processors that you can only get from Atari Age, and they're expensive PCBs. So I'll go this cheaper route where super chips are there and I can buy them and then put the super chips on a PCB and sell them. And then, of course, now fast forward 5-10 years later, after finally getting through some hurdles and starting to program my own stuff and finishing games, super chips are scarce. And so it's that same boat as I would have been in before. A lot of the games I'm programming now, I'm making 32-bit bank switching, or 32 kilobyte bank switching only. I'm leaving out the super chip if I can, just because I can't rely on a decent or reliable supply of super chips to put in the games. But of course, putting it as a download where an emulator will handle emulating a super chip is perfectly feasible, and it gets me the money. Cartridges don't have to be produced. I don't have to rely on deceptive producers who will tell you one thing and do another and stuff like that. So, and of course, there's a backstory behind all of this, and I'm the type of person where I'll forgive somebody to a fault. I'm just like that. I want to be forgiven for my faults, and so I'll forgive other people for their faults to a fault. And this may have been that case where there was a post on Atari Age where someone was pointing out that Hoser Games would produce any game for you if you sent them a bin file. Okay, and so and it was even homebrew games. That was what they were pointing out. And so they were saying, hey, okay, we can't do that. You can't do that because homebrewers deserve their money cut from their game being made, right? And so the guy running stuff on the Atari Age website chimed in and said, I have spoken to him about that and tried to point out that he shouldn't be doing that. And a couple of people came in Hoser Games' defense saying that he's not a lawyer. He doesn't know legally whether you have the right to give him a bin file to be produced into a custom-made cartridge, and that he just automatically assumes that if you send him a bin file, you have the legal right to have it made into a custom-made cartridge. And most of the games from the original Atari library from the late 70s, early 80s and stuff like that, no one is going to be defending that game. So no one's going to try to take you to court or sue you or get in trouble for taking a specific program. Maybe it's Blackjack or something, and having a reproduction of Blackjack from the original Sears Telegames or Atari VCS library and having it made into a custom cartridge. But then when you get into the realm of homebrew, those are people like me who worked on the games within the past, however many years. And Hoser Games was one of the first homebrew producers. Like back in the, I don't know when it was, maybe early to mid 90s or something, this guy was producing aftermarket Atari games. So, he's one of the first ones to do that. So I read that thinking, well, they're both wrong and they're both right. Obviously it's wrong for him to produce homebrew games without the permission of the homebrew programmers that are still making games in the market today and trying to get seen and trying to get compensation and recognition for their work. Like me, I'm not a guy making games in 1978 on some hokey old computer, and it's on 2K, and I'm getting it made for this brand new game system, the Atari VCS, the video computer system. That's not me. I am 2025 making a game that I want to get produced. So if you steal this ROM and make custom-made cartridges for people, you are stealing my work. Okay? And so, of course, I don't want that to happen. And no homebrew programmer, most of them probably don't want that to happen. Although this isn't something that you generally do to make a lot of money. Just like with royalties for anything, there has to be a customer base. There has to be, people who are willing enough to buy it for it to be profitable for you. And, there's a really good chance that so few people would ever even buy the game from the lack of popularity of the system that it will never be feasible for me to rely on it as any source of income. But that's, in this particular case, the money is not the point in the matter. It's cheating somebody out of what they made. And so it's obvious to me that if a home brewer made a game and Hoser made a copy of that game, and they knew that the person that made the game existed right now and was making games right now, and they didn't ask if the person requesting the thing to be made, if they had permission from the programmer or from whoever has the right to the program, then that would be wrong to do that. So by that same rationale, he was showing that deceptive nature before, and it may have been my fault, of course, for thinking that he would actually keep his word to me or do what he said he was going to do for me, which would have been producing 40 cartridges with, little fold-up manuals, and then putting them on eBay and selling them, and then giving me $5 per sale, which is what the agreement was in writing in our emails, which I saved. Okay, the agreement was not for him to then tell me 1 month later, "Oh, I'm not making this. Yeah, I just gave it to people I know. Here's $25." Okay, I stood to make, and of course he told me that he'd be making an ARM PCB within the next couple of months, and it's already been a couple of months since then, that would also be able to hold the ROM for this game. So that would have been a continuation of it, meaning that first wave being around $200 or more that I could have earned from the sale of the game on eBay could have turned into, continuous royalties from games that were being produced on cheaper PCBs, not requiring the super chips. So it was all just a deception, and for whatever reason. And then no one's communicating with me why they're doing this to me too. Like, anybody out there who has a problem with me, they also have a problem telling me what that problem is. So there I'm in that zone where not only do I get lied to and stabbed in the back and screwed out of everything I'm trying to do, no one will tell me why they're doing that to me. So it's a special case where they can't say, "Oh, well, you're an asshole, that's why." Okay, well, or you did something that I don't like. Okay, well, tell me what it is. No, they won't say anything to me. It's just, we've decided we are going to treat you like you don't exist, and whatever agreements we made with you, those don't mean anything. And that's been the modus operandi of everyone I've interacted with in my entire life. So That's not going to stop me from programming games, though, of course. This is something I'm doing because I love to do this. And if the world doesn't like it now, maybe the world will like it one day, I guess, right? So it is hard, though. I mean, I have small children. I have a 10-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter here at home, and I have grown-up kids that are out in the world. And my two younger children, they know about all this too. So I worry about the impact that it has on them too, because they're sitting there watching me program these games, and they're thinking, oh, Papa's making this cool game, and they're playing it, and they love it, and I'm playing it and stuff, and they're like, hey guys, someone said they're gonna make my game. It's finally gonna get sold. Someone's gonna put it out on the internet, and people are gonna get a chance to buy my game, right? And then they get to see that somebody lied to me, and that my game's not going to be made or put out there for sale. And so, how does it impact them? Looking at their father who's doing what he can, and then just learning that this person is agreeing with something to you, and then they're not keeping their word, and there's no way I can do anything about it. There's no consequences for this kind of stuff. There's no way anybody can ever change it. It's just, I made an agreement with you, and I'm not keeping my agreement with you, plus 1,000, times 1,000. That's just how it is. So this person I just talked to might keep their word to me, might keep an agreement with me. They said, I've got you, bro. They said, I can put this out there. We'll see what can be done, stuff like that. So I'm still working on all these games and, working around how to get them finished and get more of them done. I have so many projects. This one, been trying to get it to do a barrel roll, or not a barrel roll, just a loop. And the ship transforming, I think, is looking pretty good. Let's see if I can find that. There we go. All right. And of course, the popularity of the 2600 is waning considerably. But what's happened is the style of old school has taken over actual old school. So rather than play, like a homebrew for the Sega Genesis, someone would rather play Shovel Knight, which looks like it could be a Genesis game, but it's on a PC. And of course they make them so that they have, better graphics usually than what those older games could do. But they basically are making, high color pixel art that kind of form fits a style, but it exceeds it. Like that was the one that came out for Sega Genesis that has like a special chip on the cartridge. Paprium or something like that. It's a fighting game where it actually uses the Sega Genesis, but it doesn't, it's got an extra chip going on the inside that makes it so that it can, actually do what it's doing. Like the Genesis wouldn't be able to handle it otherwise, right? And that's its own thing. So when people would rather have, the artificial old school effect on a modern PC game rather than buy an old school game, for whatever reason. You don't have the hardware, that's cool. You don't want to buy the hardware. You like the style but not enough to emulate the old stuff, like with modern Sega or Atari emulators or whatever reason a person has. I think, of course, those are cool games. They look really neat. My son even plays some of them. There's like this role-playing game he plays where it's all, kind of like 8-bit, 16-bit style graphics, but it's a modern PC game that looks really cool. It's a cool storyline. And I've seen a ton of that. It's a style, but it is a style. It's not the real thing. It's they're going for a style that's reminiscent of old school, but it's, it's only style. It's not, hey, I'm doing this on a 6507 or a 68,000 processor for the Genesis, or on a Z80 for a Master System, or I'm making a ColecoVision game that you can actually stick in a ColecoVision and play. Maybe someone's making like +4 games for that really cool dead Commodore system that never got anywhere. Those aren't old school style. They are old school. They're real, and that's what I'm doing. And I really think it's dying. And people are still making it, but I know it doesn't have the impact that it did. Even 10 years ago, there was a much greater impact. So I really wish people would get into it a little bit more, especially now, because people are coming up with some of the best games that have ever been made for these systems. So right when people are starting to favor that form over function and the style over substance, the best games are actually coming out for those old school systems. Like I was watching the new retro show with Mike, who did some Game Boy games recently. Okay, and Game Boy's cheap and easy to emulate, or you could find a SD card cartridge and play these on real hardware. Maybe play it on a Super Game Boy on your Super Nintendo on your TV. Play it through a scaler on an HD TV or something. And someone had a awesome looking bartender game where you're this little you're like a little duck that's bartending to cats, and it starts you out with 2 drinks, then it gives you 3 drinks, and then there's tons more customers, and you have to remember what they request as they come up to the bar, and then bring the drink to them. And that was a Game Boy. It looked excellent, had great sound. It was an amazing, addictive looking game, like in the spirit of Tapper, but it takes it up another notch, where you actually have to remember the patterns of what the customers are asking for, like a martini or a glass of wine or a beer or something like that. Then the next one was a Resident Evil game, and it had really, really super cool like comedy and fourth wall breaking, and it was basically the first story, but it was Game Boy, almost chibi level graphics, but it had a ton of comedy worked in to all of the interactions. Like they find a guy and his head's off, and they're like, his head's off, and they're like trying to tell Jill to put his head back on. Like, will it work? Like, no, it's not working. Stuff like that. It was really, really good, really funny. And there was another, like a role-playing game, like, D&D, Final Fantasy style, really great graphics, excellent gameplay. So it's kind of sad, really, because right about when people are giving up on these, beginning, they were the doors opening for the whole entire thing. The 7800, like the 7800 and the Odyssey 1 and 2, and things like that. People are kind of like just shying away from it for whatever reason, or they're just not interested. Like I had someone comment once on Yeet Fighter as I was first making it. I didn't even call it that yet, and they said, this is so niche that only you would want this. And of course, it's hurtful to say that to somebody. Whoever said that, you're an asshole, obviously. But maybe that asshole was right. Maybe no one really wants a Street Fighter II style game for the Atari 2600. And that they want only Frogger and Asteroid clones or redraws of Adventure. Okay, maybe that's where we're at. But I remember Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and they actually had an Atari 2600 on the floor and a TV, and they were playing a low-bit Street Fighter II game on the Atari 2600. I think Shake gets mad or like blows up the TV or something, and it was really funny. But that was the first time I ever saw Street Fighter II on a 2600, in that cartoon. It wasn't real, but it was cool. And it was like, well, that would be, someone that actually knows about that system, knows about the game and stuff. It'd be cool to even try to do that, right? So for me, I don't think it is too niche to expect that people would be interested in it. But maybe that is where it is that people just don't want my game. Like, they look at it and go, why would I want that game? But I think it's fun. If you try it out, I really think, especially two people competing with each other, I think would like it. And I like it. See, I'm a really picky video game player. I'm a lot pickier with video games than movies and TV and stuff. I like The Last of Us. I think it's excellent as a TV series. I'm not offended by character, different character likenesses or different story arcs or whatever they do with their show. I think it's an excellent show. I also liked the Resident Evil Netflix thing that had like Wesker as a black guy, and he had 3 clones of himself, and he became a murderer. He had daughters that he was trying to protect and stuff. It was a complete different alternate universe kind of Resident Evil stuff. I love that show. I liked the Netflix Cowboy Bebop. I thought it was cute. I didn't have any problem with it at all. So I watch these shows and I wonder why people are so critical of them and stuff. But with video games, I am more critical. I have to be magnetic with the game. It has to adhere to me, and I have to really get into it and like it. And so I guess I like the game because it's like my baby, and everyone else thinks my baby's ugly. That's fine. They don't want to hang out with my baby. They don't care. That's fine. But it does hurt when somebody tells you your game is so niche that no one would want it except for you. And it's just it's a lot of wasted time, wasted effort, and I'm hoping there is maybe some resurgence in that desire for real interactive old school, for whatever reason. Maybe you want to do old school because it's a 9-volt game system that converts it to 5 volts, and all you have to do is plug it in and play it. You don't have to pay a subscription fee. You don't have to, use a 800-watt power supply to play it. You can use a 1 to 4 button controller. It works on your TV, whatever. Whatever reason, the games are easier. The games are cooler. Where you might not want to sit down with your friends at a gathering and then play some super deep, emotional, immersive role-playing game with graphics that look real, or some game where people are beheading each other and people might be offended at it. But then if you sit down and turn on Asteroids, you might have little kids that are like, what is that? I want to play that. You might have friends that go, I remember playing that at my babysitter's house, and they sit down and play with you. You see people laughing and bloop, 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 making fun of the sound effects, and I remember playing that. Some old people going, I remember back when that was the best game, or I played that in the arcade. So it has an appeal that's more universal and more innocent and more approachable, and it's less serious, and it's definitely less impactful, at least from the perspective of a gamer sitting there playing a game by themselves. So when I want to sit down and play Resident Evil 2 Remake, I don't want my 10-year-old son sitting there watching me blow people's heads off. I don't want my daughter to be sitting there when the character's going, what the fuck, swearing some cuss word every time a monster appears in front of them or something. And the super detailed gore and blood and stuff. And so it's really different worlds now. There's the old school, and then there's everything now that's so new and so different. And so then there's people who take the old school style and they're going, that's just what I like. But it's still running on a, modern system. It's still going to use 120 watts to upwards of 400 to 700 watts. It's going to use a, $200, $400, $600, $1,000 graphics card, or it's going to use a $600 console, or it's going to require a subscription fee. You're going to be playing on a 20-button controller, dual analog, connected to the back of your skull. You're going to pay. But then there's the, Atari 2600. You just plug it into something and you sit there and move the joystick and hit one button. You get a cartridge, you put it in, you buy it once, you don't ever have to buy it again. There is something about that. that's real. They can't take it away from you, and it's different. And you know what I'm doing is trying to make something that's never been done on the 2600. So this here is a great example. This has never been done. That's never been done on the 2600. The way I'm layering those graphics, that's never been done on the 2600. If I back out here, the way those graphics are, have never been done before. That's never been done before on a 2600. You know, I've got sprite style graphics. I've got effects going on. You know, if you look at the display, you can see the ship, the dot for the ship is moving. So I know where it is, even though I can't see it. See? So, you know, these are things that usually aren't, you know, this is graphically superior to most 2600 games. That's what I'm going for, better graphics and good gameplay and really good stories using more modern methods to create games. Right now, like think about a game like Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong Country didn't look the way it did because the Super Nintendo had advanced 3D processors. The reason Donkey Kong Country looked the way it did is because they used a graphics processing computer. They used some computer, and that generated the graphics. They were really good, like, you know, high color. They had curvature and stuff, and they looked like 3D, like, you know, Toy Story kind of modeling graphics. And then they took pictures of those graphics and turned them into sprites to make the Donkey Kong Country game. So what happens when you have the ability to make a game using modern methods where better results can be done, where larger ROMs can be created, and so you know, that's how this is. For instance, what if I took Resident Evil 2, a good example of this, and I digitized the graphics of that game, and then made a character for the 3DO, and I used the, you know, stills of Leon walking, and then I made 3D geometry and put textures that were taken from images of the rooms in that game. And then I did animation and textures of the zombies and lots of animation from the zombies as they're walking. So I could take from a source that has more advanced graphics processing than what even existed when the 3DO existed. And then because they're so much better and they look so good, I can put those in an older, high-color, 32-bit game system. It's not going to be Resident Evil 2 Remake, but it will have very, very good graphics, right? Something like Donkey Kong Country did the same thing. You know, any game where they took, graphics that were made with a graphics processing computer and then turned them into bitmap images for a 16-bit system, that same thing was happening. It might have been how Gex, the original Gex game, was done. They took 3D processed graphics from some graphics computer, and then they did frames. They took frames of animation from it in motion and turned them into two-dimensional 32-bit sprites, and then those were running along and made them look really super good. You know, could you spin around the thing like a revolving camera and look all around 3D environment? No, because the system itself probably couldn't handle something like that, right? We're in the beginnings of polygonal geometry for the backgrounds and eventually for the characters of video games. Okay, so my point is, today we're making better games than ever existed for these older systems. And so if you're playing a modern, stylized game on a modern system, well, there are much better games being made for those older systems using newer, better methods of graphics creation. For instance, this is better graphics than the Ghostbusters game. In my opinion, this is better graphics than were even on the computer versions of the game, because I have, discernible character art. You can look and see that's probably Peter Venkman on the bottom left. That's Winston Zeddemore on the bottom right. That's Slimer up at the top with 3 different colors for each of the sprites. And this isn't on Nintendo. This is on the 2600. Okay, so that's something most people wouldn't even bother trying to do on the 2600. Originally. So I'm hoping I can catch some people's attention with the works that I'm doing here, and maybe get some of these games out the door. And if what ends up happening is I have to have these games sold as ROMs on some website for people who own the modern VCS, so be it. So be it. That's what has to be done then, I guess. I hope you guys consider trying out my games. And I see a lot of guys, and maybe this would have been the right thing for me to do from the get-go. Okay, and it's still back there in my mind, but I've seen a lot of guys, they make their games and they just immediately put the games out there for people to download. So they're not even trying to get any kind of money. They're not having real cartridges made. They're not giving away free cartridges, obviously. They're not. You're not at some website where you pay for it or download it. You just go to a ROM site and then you download the game. And that's it. And part of the reason why I don't do that is because I do this to make at least a small amount of money from the work. And so it definitely sets me back. If I spend a year of my time programming one of these games, then I think I should be at least mildly compensated for the amount of work. And one of the first comments for my Yeet Fighter game when it was finally finished was, I want to download this as a ROM so I can play it on my computer. And of course you do. Of course you want to take something that I worked on for a year or more and just, not compensate me at all, and then, plug it into your computer, drop it into your computer, and then I don't exist. But, I'm making many games for the Atari 2600. And so, and it takes a lot of work, and these are not just throw together crap games. As you can see here, does this look like a 2600 game? I mean, it kind of does, but then it kind of doesn't. And so maybe it's too much to expect people to pay 15 or 20 bucks for a video game that I programmed, or to pay maybe 35 or 40 bucks for a cartridge with a manual or with a box with box art and stuff, and have it on their shelf and plug it into a real system. What most people want is, oh, you program that game. Well, you're nobody, and we don't care at all, so we're just going to download it from a download site and put it on our Harmony cart, and we're going to play it, and we don't care about you. We don't care. Well, I'm making dozens of video games, and I don't think it's wrong to expect 15 bucks or 10 bucks or something for my bin file to be downloaded, so that you can play it on your Harmony card or your computer with Stella or your Uno cart or something like that. But it is, a fast, quick, kind of sick interaction in our time where people don't pay. There's no recognition or payment. It's just, you made this thing, I'm taking it now, and I feel that same way with certain things. Mostly graphical edits or maybe translations for a game. I don't want to pay someone, but they did a lot of work. So I don't think it would really be wrong if, for instance, Hajino Fujin, the game where originally was called Miracle Warriors for the NES and for the Master System. Well, everyone got it for the Master System because Miracle Warriors came out. It's fully English translated. But then if you see that game, Hajino Fujin, or Fuhin, however it's pronounced, for the Famicom, it's a better game on the Famicom. And it has some excellent art and incredible enemy artwork, characters. The storyline's really good. It's one of the few games where I really feel like the Nintendo Famicom version is better than the Master System game that was translated and brought to our country. So I wish someone would translate that game. But at the same time, that's a game that's so text intensive that someone's going to have to spend, a year or more of their dedication to it and time and energy to translate the game properly. And then what people are going to expect, like what they're expecting with my work, is for me to just put it on a download site and then they can download it for free and then play it. And now I would understand if all I was doing was redrawing the graphics of a game. But I'm actually programming everything. I do the songs, the music, the artwork, and the songs, the sound effects, the artwork, and the program itself, the gameplay and everything. And it's labor of love, but it's still labor. Goodness gracious. So as you can see, some of my works as I've progressed through them and shown, and some of these are in my older videos. This is an idea of what they'll look like if you download them to play them on your modern Atari VCS, and maybe play with their advanced joystick or their classic joystick. And so I hope you consider, if you see Yeet Fighter available for your Atari VCS, give it a download, purchase it, tell me what you think, and help me out.